Welcome to In the Moment with Kortia, where we inform, inspire, and motivate you to be a positive agent of change. Good morning on this thriving Thursday. Hey, I just want to make sure that you're driving in today and make sure that you're careful. We got rain out there, so hey, take your time, but make sure you have plenty of time to get where you're going. And I tell you, God's been really moving on this week with the information, the guests that we've been having. But look, he's not going to stop right there. We definitely have another special guest in the house today on the radio broadcast. We have Christy Demetrakis, is the president and founder of the Empowered Speaker, a company dedicated to helping people overcome limiting fears to achieve greater sales, grow as leaders, and improve their ability to communicate for maximum results. Christy Demetrakis is a seasoned business professional with 20 plus years of experience in sales and leadership across several Fortune 500 companies, including Procter & Gamble. Christy, why don't you go ahead and open up and say hello to the listening audience, and why don't you just go ahead and give them a little nugget about yourself?
Good morning, Court. Good morning, everybody. Again, I'm Christy Demetrakis. That was a perfect pronunciation of my name. You're one of the few who gets it right. Oh, my gosh. So thank you for reading a portion of my bio. I'm looking forward to talking a lot more with you all this morning. But again, as Court said, I am the president and founder of the Empowered Speaker. It is a company focused on helping people to achieve their God-given dreams. And I do that through workshops, conferences, my Faith to Conquer series, which is an online course, speaking, all those different things. But my goal, what God has given me is the desire and the passion to help people to achieve results. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
I mean, that's just really, really awesome. And see, it is what Christy just came and she fell right in line with what God is actually doing, right here on the radio show, and how each and every day we're giving you the information to not only, break the cycle of possibly, fear that's probably been holding you back, or, doubts that you may have had, but at how she says she's just doing those things and how she's basically going to be sowing into your life to really get you up to another level. And that's what God's doing. That iron sharpening iron, Christy. And I just really love that. Really love it. What's really evident is that right now, as you know, you're tuning in and, you heard the brief introduction. And Christy's going to give you a lot more information that we have. But look, I want you to make sure that you're actually staying tuned in. Okay, you know that number to call in when you have your questions or comments, because Christy has a lot of good info and insight that's really going to, well, as we like to say, set the captive free. So look, definitely we're going to go ahead into our first break. But look, stay with us as you're in your moment. Welcome back to In the Moment with Kortia, hey, on this thriving Thursday. And definitely we have the sensational Christy Demetrakis on the phone lines with us today. Christy, I tell you, I love the intro and how you basically let the people know from the onset that, hey, she's here to actually help and to be a blessing. So I'm sure you've been asked this question before, Christy, but hey, for those that don't know, how did you actually, get started on this journey that you're on?
Oh, what a wonderful starting question. When I was in college, so it'll give you a little bit of background as we go, I went to UNC Chapel Hill. And when I was in college, I graduated with a degree in speech communications and radio television. And my goal at that time was to be on someone's news desk, an anchor, CNN, ESPN, one of those things, not ESPN because sports is not my strength. But that was my goal until I had an internship and I realized it takes a while to get to the lifestyle to which I was accustomed. And so I ended up going into sales. And my career started with Ralston Purina Pet Food Company. But the whole time that I was working, so call it from the 13 years from the time I graduated college to when I actually started my company, the Empowered Speaker, I can remember having conversations with my mom literally 3 or 4 days a week. And I was moving, my family, we were moving all different places because in sales you tend to move geographically. And I was having all these conversations. Mom, I want to start my own business. I want to be a speaker. I want to be a speaker. I want to be a speaker. And as you probably know, and people who are listening probably know, the longer you wait to do something, the harder it gets.
Absolutely.
You have kids. You have a house payment. You have car payments. You have a dog. You have. It just goes on and on, and it just gets harder and harder to take a leap, right? And so finally, I actually joined an organization called Toastmasters. And Toastmasters is a public speaking leadership training international program for those who aren't familiar. And when I joined that program, I got this Toastmasters catalog, and there was a woman in there who was, in essence, franchising her public speaking training program that she had established for the last 20 years. And I thought, this is perfect, because one of the things I have always been gifted to do is to train people on their public speaking and presentation skills. I used to do it in college, and people would literally come to my room, get me ready for this presentation. And I never thought that could be a business. Otherwise, I would have just gone that way. But anyway, so I ended up getting trained to be a certified instructor for what we call the Speakers Training Camp. And that was the launch of my business, The Empowered Speaker. 3 years later, I'm trying to establish myself also as a speaker, and I thought, you know what, I need some backroom product to sell. Every good speaker has something to sell at the end of the presentation, right? And I don't have anything. And I said, well, I should write a book. Well, now, why would I think that was a natural starting place? But anywho, I have never had any aspirations, never had a bucket list item to be an author. But I said, I should write a book. And so in 6 months, I wrote a book, because that was going to be my product to sell in the back of the room. And that book was Faith to Conquer Fear, Inspiration to Achieve Your Dreams. That book is, if you think about it, it's very inspirational. It's a compilation of quotes and anecdotes and biblical references and stories, all to inspire people to walk in their God-given purpose. And when I wrote that book, my intent was to write it just so I'd have something to sell in the back of the room. But I had no idea that God was going to give me, that was going to be the planting of that Faith to Conquer Fear message.
Wow.
And when I wrote that book and it came out, I don't know how many people who have written a book actually go back and read their own book, but I did. And after I read it, I was like, this is good. Girl, this is pretty good. And I was inspired by my own writing. And I said, you know what, God, you're funny. This was a very expensive lesson, because I self-published. This was a very expensive lesson, but it was a lesson I also needed in learning how to start to overcome those fears that held me back for 13 years from even starting that business.
That's good.
And so that was the start of my overall The Empowered Speaker company. That's
good. I mean, that's good. And I'm chuckling over here. And, Christy, why don't you just go ahead and mention the title of that book one more time for me, please?
Yeah, my first book is Faith to Conquer Fear, Inspiration to Achieve Your Dreams. Yeah. Yes, so that was the first one.
And I love how you said, you just started to say, hey, maybe I should just write a book, as that's the starting point. And, it's kind of funny, exactly when God had me to write my first book. I actually, when I got it in my spirit, I just said, Satan, I rebuke you, because, I didn't want to write a book. And, it was literally a back and forth tussle for almost 6 months. I'm trying to go to sleep. He's talking about the book. I'm waking up. He's talking about the book. I'm like, okay, if you want this book to be written, then you're going to have to write it. I have no idea.
Oh, my gosh. I said the same thing.
And what's interesting, how you just said I don't know if anyone reads their own book. Well, I didn't actually read my book until like a year after, and I self-published my book as well. And then I was just like you. When I read my book, I was like, man, this is good. If I would have known this 10, 15 years ago, it's just hilarious. It really is.
Yes.
So, Christy, I mean, in saying that, it sounds like, that whole realm of you just having a made-up mind to really just jump out there and do what, God is calling you to do as far as like in this area. And sometimes we kind of take that leap of faith and not really realize that it's actually God prompting us. It's kind of like we start to go towards what's like that path of least resistance. You know how when people will come into your room and, you just said, well, man, you got this revelation, I'm kind of good at this area, and it kind of tweaked you to kind of go, towards that, to a certain degree. But in what you're doing, I mean, how is it that, well, how have you been able to kind of put certain things together to where you're actually now, you kind of gave a couple steps of how you've been able to make that leap of faith and jump to like overcome fear. I mean, how does one actually really start the process of overcoming fear?
That's a wonderful question, and it's a question that everybody wants to know, but many people don't ask. Most of us just sit in our fear, or we don't even recognize that our actions are a result of having some underlying fear. So one of the things I teach in my new book is Faith to Conquer Fear, The Journey. One of the things I teach in that book is the art of conquering fear, and ART is an acronym. The A stands for acknowledging you have fear. The R is for understanding the root causes of those fears, and the T is taking action. And so in acknowledging that you have fear, I give people a series of statements in the book, and I'll just read just a couple for our purpose today. But I ask them these statements, and I say, if you put a check mark beside two or three of these, I think 8 or 9 statements, you probably have some underlying fear. And a couple of the statements here that I ask people to evaluate themselves on, here's the other thing before I say that. Overcoming fear is about being self-aware. Too many of us are not self-aware. You cannot lie to yourself. That's a bad thing. At least be honest with yourself, okay? So acknowledging you have fear is the first step. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous. What's the first step? Acknowledging that you're an alcoholic. So one of the questions statements is, you procrastinate the things that will make the most difference. That one really has resonated with me, and sometimes still does, because I am human. But a lot of times people who have fear won't focus on the thing that will make the most difference or help them to really achieve that goal. They'll do all the little bitty things around it. It's like a to-do list. You write your to-do list and you focus on all the things that are easy to do versus the one that's really going to deal with the strategy and helping you to move forward or to a different place. Another one is you avoid the people and situations that hold you accountable. That's a big one. Another one, this is about being self-aware, you blame circumstances, lack of knowledge, other people, etc., for your lack of progress. So those are just a few questions statements that I have people consider to see if, again, the behaviors that they are exhibiting is a sign of an underlying fear. Once people have acknowledged that they have fear, then we move on to the R, understanding the root causes of those fears. And that's a very, very important step. And I'll tell you a personal story relative to this. When I wrote my first book, Faith to Conquer Fear, Inspiration to Achieve Your Dreams, when I wrote that book, God also gave me the vision for hosting a workshop or a conference to go along with that. And for a couple of years, I acted like I didn't hear him. And it kept coming. I'm like, no, nay, I don't want to do that. And I ended up on the phone with a woman I had met via LinkedIn, and she was from Australia. And I remember one Saturday morning, it was sometime in December, one Saturday morning, we connected via Skype International. That was a good way to connect. And we were just talking about our different ideas and our businesses and just our hopes and dreams, all seemingly innocent. And as we were talking, I was telling her how God had given me a vision for this workshop because of the book. And she said, well, what's stopping you from doing the workshop? And I said, well, that's an excellent question. I don't have a good answer, but that's an excellent question. And she said, well, hypothetically, if you were to do this one-day workshop, what would it look like? In court, I literally, from the breakfast to the end of the day, I laid out minute by minute everything that was going to happen, who my speakers would be, everything, how many people would be in the room, where I would host it, all these things. And she said, great, sounds like we have a plan. I'm actually going to be in the U.S. in April. Let's do this. Oh, my gosh. I broke into a full and immediate sweat. And I thought, well, how could I get out of it, right? I literally just laid out my whole conference. And so in April of that year, I hosted the first annual Faith to Conquer Fear conference. But here's the thing. So that happened in December is when the sweat broke out. April is when the conference happened. But the whole time I had made that decision, so we got a 4-month window of time, I am terrified. And I'm terrified for no logical reason, which is why I knew there was something else going on. Because I had been in corporate America for 15 years at least at that point. I had been in sales. I've been working with companies. I have organized meetings. I've done marketing. I've done all the things that people usually worry about when they think about putting on an event. I knew how to do all of that stuff. So that should not have been an issue for me. Hosting this event should not have been an issue. And so I knew there was something else going on. And I finally just started to pray. I said, God, I'm moving. I'm doing this. We've set the date. I'm doing this, but I need you to show me why I am so afraid. Why is this such a big deal for me? And I was driving down the highway in February. So we're at the midway point. Driving down the highway in February, and a memory came to me of my 16th birthday party. At the time, my brother-in-law and my brother-in-law's sister and I were literally the same age. Our birthdays were days apart. And so we decided to co-host a Sweet 16 party. And on the night of the party, none of the people, actually one person that I invited showed up. To this combined Sweet 16 party, only one person showed up that I had invited. And I had forgotten that. I had literally repressed that for however many years that was at that time. I had repressed that. And what I realized in that moment when he brought that memory back to me, because I had prayed for him to reveal it to me, is I realized I had a fear of rejection. And in my mind, that anything that was important to me was not going to be important enough for other people to attend.
Awesome.
And so what was really holding me back from hosting that event was not the logistics, not the marketing and all of those things that make it come out well. It was my fear that nobody was going to actually show up.
All right, Christy.
And so when you talk about understanding
hold the rest of that just for a brief moment, just because we're going to get into this break. And look, definitely we're going to want to get back into it, because I'm like all on edge as far as with the story and how it's just relating. I'm over here doing checklists on myself right now. But but the thing is, definitely we're going to go and take this break. And I know everyone is on the edge of their seats just like we are. And I know as you get back, you're going to be really reveling in what Christy has to say. So stay in your moment. Welcome back to In the Moment with Kortia, Kuzan, and wow, if you are just tuning in on today, we have the dynamic Christy Demetrakis on the line with us today, and wow, she is bringing the heat, she is bringing the power, and I tell you, she has myself and my wife in the studio, and we're doing our own checklist, like, ooh, that's good, it's good, but it kind of whipped us a little bit, but but look, I tell you, I'm not going to stay on. I want Christy to just pick right back up where she left off before break, because wow, right now she's talking about, she went through acknowledging things that bring about fear, and then of course the root causes of fear. And wow, I just wanted to just get right back into that, because she's reaching, I know, all of you right now as you're in your moment. Christy, take it away.
Absolutely. So as I said, my big revelation was that I had a fear of rejection. And I've always been the type of person who I feel I'm very self-confident, right? I'm 5 feet tall, but most people who are around me don't even realize what my height is, because I carry myself in such a strong way. So it was actually surprising to me to understand and realize that that was a fear that I had. And so I ended up hosting that first conference. It was a success. And then I hosted 2 more after that. But what I want to make sure we're clear on is that the fear does not necessarily go away. It still may be in the back of your mind, but it is all about moving forward in the process. A wise woman once said, do it afraid. And that's what I did every year. Every year I wondered who was going to show up. Was it just going to be my husband and my 2 kids and my mom? And that's true. I said, well, the 5 of them will be there, but we'll have too much food, right? So for 3 years, I hosted this conference in fear of rejection, but I did it. And that's the part I want you to take away. Now, as we talk about understanding the root causes of your fear, there's 3 questions you need to ask yourself. The first one is, what is the history of your fear? Did it begin with a negative experience? Did something actually happen? Or is this a fear that was put on you by someone else? You know, some fears are not actually yours based on your experiences. It could be that your grandmother was afraid of snakes, so you are. Now, snakes are a good thing to be afraid of, let me be very clear. But it could be, you know, it's something that really has nothing to do with you, but because your grandparents or your parents were afraid to leave the state and move, that you're afraid to leave the state and move. So you really want to dissect what's the history of your fear. You want to think about what triggers your fear. What situations or circumstances bring your fear to the forefront? And you recognize that probably not as, oh my gosh, I'm feeling a fear of rejection. It may come off in your actions. Why don't I want to do that? Every time somebody asks me to do that, I say no. Even though deep down I would love to do it. Why do I keep saying no? So what triggers your fear? And then how does that fear affect you? What behaviors, emotions, or actions do you do or do you exhibit when those fears show up? So again, fears are not always easily identified as I have a fear of rejection, I have a fear of change, I have a fear of the unknown. It is more in your actions. And that's what we really have to dig deep on. The T is taking action. And so once you've acknowledged you have fear, once you get to the point of understanding the root causes of those fears, and that root cause section may take you a little while. Now it's about taking action. I told you in my personal story, I had set the date for that conference. I was doing it because now my name was on it. So then I got a pride factor, which that's a whole nother talk show. But so my name was on it. So I was making sure that this thing came to life, even though I was so afraid. And part of taking action is little things like imagining the outcome you desire. I already had in my mind, even before I planned this conference, what I wanted it to look like. And so my expectation is what manifested itself. The other thing is, and there's several examples I give in the book, or several options I give in the book, but another one is considering direct confrontation. And a lot of people, and this is kind of the do it afraid mentality, but some things are bigger in our minds than they actually are when they manifest themselves.
Definitely.
And you just have to address it. You just have to say, you know what, I refuse to continue to be afraid of this, and I'm going to do it. My husband is deathly afraid. Well, deathly might be a big word. He's really afraid of heights. But when we go on our family vacations and if there's some activity, we went ziplining. He went ziplining for the first time, I think 2 or 3 years ago when he and I went on a cruise. But he's afraid of heights. But he said, you know what? We're here. This is a wonderful opportunity, and I'm going to do it. And he had a great time. Now, is he still afraid of heights? Yep. Will he have to talk himself up the next time? Yep. But he's done it. And he didn't die. And that's the thing. Fear makes us think that we are alone, that things that are happening are only happening to us, that nobody else can relate. Fear isolates you. It is very, very isolating. And so part of taking our power back is actually moving out ahead of that fear so that it doesn't continue to keep us in bondage.
Wow.
So as I talk about the art of conquering fear, that's really what goes into it. And that's a lot. And that's just in the first 3 chapters of the book. And so there's a whole lot more. But that's just the first 3 chapters just to get everyone grounded on where they are in the journey.
Wow. That all I can say is wow. Okay. That's just like really, really awesome.
Can I quote you on that?
Oh yeah, you definitely have really opened up the door to so many different things. And I mean, there are a lot of people right now that are listening, okay, under the sound of our voices, and they basically went and they've said, hey, you know something? She's touching on all of these things. I didn't realize all of these things, but you know something? It just makes sense why I'm going through certain bouts of fear in my life. Or basically, a lot of people get in this, self-destruct mode because of the different fears in their life. And I mean, wow, Christy, you just bringing it all to the forefront. I mean, it's just great and it's just awesome. And every time it starts to get really, really good, that's when we have to go ahead and wind it down just a little bit. But look, everyone that's listening, stay right with us and we'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to In the Moment with Kortia Kuzan. Wow, and if you just did not realize it, this is definitely Thriving Thursday. And we have with us on the phone lines the dynamic, the sensational, the chain-breaking Christy Demetrakis, because, wow, she has bringing the heat, and, wow, it's smoking up in the studio today. Look, I tell you what, Christy, why don't you just go ahead, kind of listen, should I say, reach out to the studio, the audience out there, give your contact information, because look, I just want to make sure you've got all the time to keep sharing, exactly what God has in your spirit.
Wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity. I would love to hear from you all. You can reach me a couple of ways, several ways. You can reach me on my Facebook page. It's at Demetrakis author. And if you, hopefully, Court, you have somewhere with the spelling of my name to help people out. But at Demetrakis, so you can find me on Facebook. You can reach me on my website, empoweredspeaker.com. You can send me an email, Christy at empoweredspeaker.com. And then I'd love to also, I've been talking a lot about my second book, Faith to Conquer Fear, The Journey, so I'd love to give you a free chapter download of that book so you can kind of wet your whistle and see if that's something you want to get the full book later. And you can get that by going on my website, empoweredspeaker.com/books and products. So if you go there, all you have to do is just fill a little quick, give me your name and your email, and I'll send you that free download of that one chapter of the newest book I have.
Awesome. And if you haven't realized yet, definitely it would be a powerful, taste of a resource to actually have in your arsenal to actually combat, those thoughts of fear and those emotional fears, just whatever's trying to hold you back from, God's given purpose in your life. And I mean, Christy, we've definitely been talking about, the acknowledging the fear, the root causes of your fear, and taking action, when it comes to your fear. So, I know there are some people out there that are like, wow, you just hit, every button that you could possibly hit as far as like what's going on in my life. I mean, how do you actually, in this regard, now we know the direct opposite or the thing that combats fear is what? Faith. So how do you actually strengthen your faith, in these situations?
I'm so glad you asked that question. So faith really is the opposite of fear. You just named it. When people tend to have low faith, fear tends to rise. And so we all know what faith is, but Hebrews 11:1 says that faith is the confidence that what we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things we can't see. And I would tell you that there are some barriers to faith. Okay, so there's some things that get in the way that allows things like fear to usher themselves in. So I would tell you it's what you see, the environment, people, work, living situations. Is a barrier to faith. Your financial situation. A lot of people have low faith when their money's not right. Sickness or health issues. Things that are going on in society, which we can all, recognize right now. The need for control is a big barrier to faith. And whether that's control of people and or situations, that spirit of control that I know many of us are familiar with. Lack of trust is a barrier to faith. And time. When things that you've been praying for, Court and his wife and I were talking about some things that they prayed for years ago that are just now manifesting themselves. But when things take a long time, it tends to weaken our faith, right? So these are just a few things that cause our faith to diminish. And those signs of low faith is like worry, doubt, what we speak. Death and life is in the power of the tongue. Absolutely. So when we start to say things that are contrary to what we want our reality to look like, that's a sign of low faith. You can tell just by being around someone just for a few minutes where their faith level is. People who have trust issues, that's a sign of low faith. And then, of course, fear, which is what we've been talking about today.
Wow.
And so if you think about how to increase your faith, because that's the direct way to combat fear, is to increase your faith. It's three things. It's believing, it's praying, it's listening. Mm-hmm. And I won't give you all the Bible scriptures and all that good stuff that goes with it, that goes with all these things. I'm happy to send this also as another tool for you. But believing is basically believing that God's word also applies to you. I know I fall guilty sometimes of really believing. Somebody comes to me and says, Christy, I'm writing a book. Christy, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I am their biggest cheerleader. But then I have a hard time praying for the things that I really, really want. And so we have to believe that what God's word says actually applies to us as well. It's not just for someone else. And I think you also need to surround yourself with believers. So putting yourself around people who have low aspirations, don't want anything for themselves. Oh my God, I'm so broke. Oh my God, I'm so, this is terrible. You don't need that. You don't need that because it's going to suck you down. It's easier to be sucked down than it is to pull somebody up, okay? So you want to surround yourself with believers. The second thing is to pray. You need to ask for a revelation of the signs of low faith in your life. It's just like I asked God to show me why I was hesitant to do this conference. We need to ask for God to show us what it is that we're missing that will help us to overcome. And then the last thing is listen. Romans 10:17 says faith comes by hearing. Faith comes by hearing. And then 1 Kings 19:12 says that God, it's a gentle whisper of God. God speaks in a gentle whisper, which means he is not going to yell at us. He is not going to, he's not going to try to yell at us over the stereo, over the earbuds in our ear, over the TV and all of our favorite shows and all the things that we do to distract ourselves to keep from focusing on him. He's not going to do that. We have to be in a space where we can hear God and we can hear the gentle whisper of his voice. So the way to increase our faith and overcome our fear is by believing that God's word applies to us, by praying, and by listening.
Wow, awesome. Powerful, powerful, powerful. Definitely a good mouthful. That's some good meat of the word right there if you didn't realize it. And look, I know you're still just like, wow, okay, what's next? Wait, look, Christy's definitely going to be coming back in the last portion of the show to share more with you and take you out. But look, stay with us as you're right there in your moment. Welcome back to In the Moment with Kortia Kuzan and wow, Christy Demetrakis. And in case you're wondering how to spell that last name, it's Demetrakis. Christy Demetrakis. And I tell you, it may sound unusual, but I tell you, the power that she's coming with over the airwaves today is definitely divinely inspired. So, Christy, look, one more time, in this last portion of our show, why don't you go ahead and give that contact information, and then after that, whatever the Holy Spirit has upon your heart, I just want you to go ahead and flow with it.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you all for the time, and thanks for those of you who have hung around and listened to me talk at this hour of the morning. That's wonderful. Congratulations to me for talking at this hour of the morning. Good grief, Court. I'm telling you, could you do something a little later? But anywho, I can be, again, you can reach me, and I would love to hear from every one of you. Reach me on Facebook at C. Demetrakis Author. My website is empoweredspeaker.com. You can also get a free copy of a free chapter download of my newest book, Faith to Conquer Fear, The Journey, if you go on my website to the books and products page. So I'd be happy to give you that as a free download. Hopefully it'll whet your appetite for reading the whole book, but I would love for you to have that in your hands. So that's how you can contact me. I look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. And Christy, well, like I said, I know exactly how you've been flowing. I know that's something that's probably near and dear, and I know we have probably about 5 minutes or so left in the show. So why don't you just go ahead and, whatever the Holy Spirit has in your heart right now, why don't you go ahead and share with the listening audience?
Probably the last thing I want to share with folks is that we've talked a lot. We've talked about the art of conquering fear. We've talked about increasing faith as a solution to conquering fear. But at the end of the day, it all starts with the mind. It all starts with our minds. We have to want to overcome a fear. And a lot of times in life, we get comfortable with our fears. We get comfortable with our infirmities. Some people are comfortable being sick because that's what they know. They get lots of attention when they're sick, and they just kind of get comfortable in in places where they should be uncomfortable. And so I will tell you that it really all starts with our mind. We have to want to overcome the fear. We have the power to change our mind. So if we think about changing our mind, there's three things. It's focusing on what you see, focusing on what you hear, and focusing on what you say. And some of these things I've touched on already indirectly. But focusing on what you see. I don't know how many of you have ever done a vision board before. If you haven't, I encourage you to do one. A vision board is but it's an exercise of putting on paper visually what you want your reality to look like. And it is a powerful exercise. We spend a lot of time thinking, oh, I'd love to have $1 million. Oh, I'd love to have a big house with a porch. Oh, I'd love to have all the things, whatever your dream is. Oh, I want to be a writer, whatever that dream is. We think about it, but until we visualize it, until we really put it up where we can see it every day, and it becomes subconscious in our minds start to act those things out. Our mind starts to make those things happen when it can see, because our mind doesn't know the difference between what we're thinking and what is reality. So that's a very powerful thing. So if you've never done a vision board, or if you've never actually put in front of you the image of what you want your reality to look like, I encourage you to do that. The second thing is what you hear. This goes back to what I said earlier about increasing your faith. Surround yourself with people who encourage you. And if they don't encourage you, find some other people. There's always going to be someone, whether it's me, whether it's Court and Jennifer, someone who is willing to encourage you and be your accountability partner for helping you to move forward. And the last thing is what you say. This is what we own. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. We have the power to change our reality by what we say. The Bible says it. You shall have what you say. And when we flippantly say things like, girl, you know I'm crazy, or I'm so dumb, I'm so clumsy, I'm so, when we say those things, that's what our mind believes. We have to start speaking contrary. If we're speaking negatively, we have to start speaking contrary to what actually exists, so that we say those things to reinforce what we want our reality to really be.
True.
So it really does all start with the mind. So I wish God's greatest blessings on you. I thank you all for listening, and I hope I hear from you via Facebook, via my website, or any of the other things I offered to you today.
Christy, I tell you, it has been more than just an honor and a privilege. I mean, it has been like we just really found someone that's our sibling, not only in the Lord, but I mean, you really just brought everything that God had in store for the day. And look, each and every one of you out there, I know you've been reached in your moment. I know Christy has just really alleviated a lot of the pressures and fears that you've actually had in your life and gave you solutions on how to get out of those things. So I would invite you to visit her, get those resources, and look, don't just stop. Don't just let this particular moment just stagnate on this day. Allow it to increase and carry over. And look, just to let you know, if you didn't realize it already, we love you. God loves you more. And if you couldn't tell, Christy loves you. But look, stay in your moment, and we'll see you on tomorrow.